What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the potential rumor out there that Paramount might be looking to buy Warner Brothers. And this is something that has been very interesting to me, as Warner Brothers has been in debt, and really as a studio, they've had some success this year, but the last, I would say, 10 years has not gone great for Warner Brothers, been in lots of debt, and they are recently, in my opinion, I think most people would agree, positioning themselves into a position to be purchased by somebody. And I've always kind of thought that could be Comcast. I think when you're talking about the theme park end of things, that would make a lot of sense, as they do have the Harry Potter attractions, obviously at Universal Studios. But Paramount actually could make a lot of sense here, and John Campea has a video talking about some of the rumors he has heard, kind of breaks this down. So I figured this would be a good video to do a reaction on and see what we think about the potential that Warner Brothers could be bought by Paramount. So we're going to react to this video and get some thoughts on it here.
That all down, let's get into it, shall we? We're going to start off with this. Well, you guys know that Paramount has just been taken over by Skydance. It's now official. It's all done, signed, sealed, delivered, the whole thing. And we talked a
And really a big move right off the bat. They made that deal to bring the UFC to Paramount, paying, I think, like $7 billion. I know it's like $1.1 billion per year for like 7 years to do that. So right out the gate, ever since Skydance basically has taken over Paramount, they're already making waves in the industry. So this could yet again be another one for them.
lot about a number of things they've already announced. The fact that they're aiming for 15 theatrical films per year. The fact that their top priorities right now are things like Top Gun, Star Trek, World War Z, and others from all the IP that they have right now. They also talked about the fact that they're not really interested all that much in streaming movies. I mean, sure, after the theatrical, but they are focused on theatrical movies. Well, there's been another whisper going around that is now picking up traction as more and more sources are coming forward, that taking over Paramount may not be the end of it. Because there's a story coming out of Bellani's Puck right now that they have sources telling them that Paramount buying the good folks over at Warner Brothers is actually one of their priorities. Puck wrote the following. They said, but one source who said he knew definitively that Skydance has long planned a move on Warner pointed to last week's announcements that the motion picture group, Warner, is about to cut 10% of its staff. Warner Brothers is having a banner run of movies right now. We've talked about this. They had 6, they just set a record with 6 films in a row opening to 40 million or plus, never been done before. And they're announcing layoffs, he said. Reading between the lines, they're preparing the company for sale. They need to scale up. Warner Brothers declined to comment. Okay.
That is a pretty telltale sign that you have in that situation. A company is basically trying to get themselves in a position to be bought, especially given that scenario where Warner Brothers has a string of success, which they have not had recently, like I said in the beginning. But the fact that you would go off that success and then have 10% of your staff be cut, and obviously that would make you think, why would you do that? But Warner Brothers has been trying to have a lot of cost cutting ever since David Zaslav has taken over. Again, I don't know how much debt that Warner Brothers is in, but they're in a ton of debt and are really trying to work themselves out of a hole here. I guess you could look at that and say they're still cost cutting, as they're probably still not profitable overall as a company. But at the same time, coming off of those theatrical releases, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense you'd be cutting now unless you're trying to set it up to be purchased to make it less bloat, whoever takes that over. Because I guess you could have the scenario where you buy it and then have to fire these people, or if they decide to go ahead and fire people now, whoever buys them doesn't have to go in there and be the hatchet man, as sometimes you do see in some takeovers. I think after some of these theatrical runs here, yeah, that's a little eyebrow raising, I think you could say, to say the least.
So this is a different sort of beast than if, say, Disney was looking at buying Warner Brothers, or if NBC Universal was looking to buy Warner Brothers, because they are much bigger companies than Skydance and Paramount are.
Valid point, and that's something that I've talked about with Comcast potentially buying them, as I do think they could run into some red tape, as Comcast is much bigger than Paramount, so them buying Warner Brothers does bring up, monopolistic, they might look at that and say, hey, we're not going to let you, become even bigger here. Same thing with like Disney, if they were to try and do that, which there's been no rumblings about Disney doing that. But I think Comcast, personally speaking, I would love for Comcast to buy Warner Brothers, because I think potentially that opens a lot of things on the theme park side. Then you have the Warner Brother in there with the DC characters that potentially could find its way into the Universal parks. I know they have an agreement with Six Flags, but I mean, I think you could throw enough money at that to get the DC rights if you really wanted them. But yeah, Paramount doing it, not as big, wouldn't have as many obstacles to overcome. And it could be one where Comcast maybe, a lot of these companies will start looking at these things. I'm sure they have people they talk to inside the government saying, hey, would this be, would this go through? And they could have been basically told, maybe. And we do know currently under this administration, Comcast is not looked upon super favorably when you're talking about how they are viewed, because they own NBC and some of the news sources that they're not too happy with. So that could be something that could hold that up versus Paramount right now. Obviously, they got the green light, do the merger with Skydance and Paramount. So they could be in a position where they feel pretty confident they could pull something like this off after just going through yet another merger on their own.
And I have the feeling that if Paramount did try to make a move to take over Warner Brothers, that they wouldn't run into too many government problems. Let's just say it's obvious that they're not above trying to grease the wheels at government to try to get the things they want done. But also they're a smaller company. Like it's not as anti-consumer as, let's say, a huge monolith like Disney or NBC Universal were to take it over. It's less problematic that way. Now, some people may understandably ask, well, why would Paramount even want Warner Brothers? Why would they want to spend, like, Skydance only had to spend like $8 billion to get Paramount. They'll have to spend like $30 billion to get something like Warner Brothers. But why could they want it? Well, I mean, take a look at this. Right now, Netflix is the king of the hill when it comes to streaming, right? 301 million subscribers, give or take.
The only thing I'll correct on is technically when you look at streaming wars, YouTube wins all of it. It's not, obviously YouTube is free. You can get YouTube Premium, but YouTube blows everybody else out of the water when it comes to streaming. Now, of the, I guess you would call them premier streamers or of scripted television and things like that, yes, Netflix is number one, but YouTube dominates just overall streaming of just, watching things online. It is definitely YouTube.
These are numbers, or of the most recent numbers I've been able to find. They might be a little bit different, but basically you're getting the ballpark here. So Netflix at about 301 million, Amazon Video at 200 million, Disney Plus in third at 127.8 million. Now,
I will say Amazon Video is weird because I don't believe, I think to this day, they count basically all the Amazon Prime subscribers as part of Amazon Video. So you don't really know how many people are signed up for Amazon Video or just Amazon Prime. As like I have Amazon Prime and it comes with Amazon Video just automatically. And I think most people sign up for Amazon Prime for, the shipping and the products that you order. So even though they're technically number two, I don't know how much of that I would say is specifically Amazon Prime, because I don't think Amazon Prime is bigger, has a bigger footprint on streaming wise than say HBO Max, Disney Plus, Paramount, and those. They do have some good shows, that pop up there from time to time. Reacher being one of them. The Chris Pratt show that's supposed to have another season. I can't remember what the name of that one, but they've had a few. But for the most part, I think it's the kind of muddying the waters a bit on where it stands as a streaming service on its own. But that's kind of a side point there.
Once you get down to fourth, that's when you get HBO Max. And HBO Max right now sitting at somewhere between 122 and 125 million subscribers. Paramount down in fourth place is 78. Okay, then you got Hulu at 55 and Peacock at 41. The cock, as we call it around here. So look at that Paramount and HBO number, though. If Paramount were to take over Warner Brothers and merge in their streaming services, you suddenly easily leapfrog over Disney. And now you're pretty much in second place, only about 100 million behind Netflix as a dominant streamer.
And again, not to mention, they just made that deal with the UFC for Paramount Plus, where if you subscribe to Paramount Plus, you can see all the UFC fights. They're no longer doing the pay-per-view model. And they even said in the article that I did a video on last week, UFC fans roughly estimate in the U.S. about 150 million, I guess you would say, dedicated fans to the UFC. So if you have even half of those fans sign up for Paramount Plus, that already puts you well over 125 million subscribers if that does take place. And then if you added on HBO Max on top of that, that would almost probably put Paramount Plus where HBO Max is now in terms of subscribers. So you would essentially almost be doubling when you're talking about the streaming side of things. I mean, it makes sense if you're Paramount to look at doing something like that for sure.
And it's not just the numbers, because when you actually look at it, Rob, you look at symmetry, basically. Paramount is really killing it with their programming. They're killing it with their programming, particularly a lot of the Taylor Sheridan stuff, but they have other IPs and stuff like that. They're doing great with that.
I've said this for a while. I think Paramount Plus has some of the best shows on the streaming networks. You got Tulsa King, like he said, the Taylor Sheridan stuff, which is Tulsa King, Landman, some of the other ones that are on there. Mobland is really good. Like, they have some really good shows on there. So I've always been kind of surprised that Paramount Plus has always kind of lagged behind. Now, they don't have, I guess you could say, up until recently, obviously the UFC is going to help with that. I guess they don't have just a ton of streaming programs out there, but the ones that they do, for the most part, are very high quality and have been very good. I suppose they just don't have enough maybe to maintain a really big subscriber base.
HBO has great programming, but they also have this huge slate of Warner Brothers movies that are on there and that will be going there. All those 6 movies we just talked about, all going to be on HBO Max.
Sinners is already on there.
Sinners is already there. We're about to get, a number of other things too. So this suddenly becomes a very attractive package. And one of the things that they said in that Puck newsletter, Rob, that really does ring true. It is very odd that Warner Brothers is doing layoffs right now when they're on their best streak ever since Discovery took it over. They are clearly in their best stretch right now since taking over Warner Brothers. And the only real explanation, at least to me, that's feasible seems to maybe they are looking to sell and maybe Paramount is a buyer. I don't know, Rob, you're looking at this landscape. Do you think Paramount could be angling to get Warner Brothers? If so, why? Would it be a good idea, bad idea? How do you see it?
I don't think so. I mean, if anything, they could make an exclusive distribution deal with HBO Max if they wanted to. There was talk, I remember a couple years back when Eddie Murphy was doing his movies, that they might have a deal, an exclusive deal, Paramount would, with Netflix. But I think that, Warner Brothers, as one of the oldest, most venerable studios in the world, we need Warner Brothers as its own entity. We need Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca. We need a different approach. I think Paramount needs to be honest, slow their roll and build their studio. Make Paramount a player, put it back on top of the mountain, so to speak, and I think really concentrate on their core business. They're making interesting moves. The UFC thing was really interesting. The fact that they're going to concentrate,
that was
huge. And the fact that they're going to concentrate on their IP, really interesting. I mean, they're looking to expand their core business, but buying a whole nother studio and going through that rigmarole, and what are they going to do to own 2 lots and then combine it all? I think that's unnecessary, and it would diminish. The landscape of movie making is already contracting. The last thing we need to do, when 20th Century Fox was acquired and 20th Century Studios came out of the merger with Disney, at least they have somebody like the quiet king of franchises, Steve Asbell, there to make sure that they're, once again, exploiting the Fox IP. We're getting Alien, we're getting Predator, we got Hellraiser, we're getting some new interesting movies out of 20th Century Studios. I want to see that happen at Paramount. I want to see it not combine with another studio into some behemoth that's going to be unruly, and then they're going to have to part out. They don't need 2 different studios. They don't need all of that infrastructure. Make a deal with HBO Max.
I understand what he's saying, but when you look at the landscape of everything, he even said Hollywood's contracting. Plus, you throw in the streaming stuff on top of this. And I've been saying for years that what you're going to end up seeing is the fact that there's too many streamers out there. I mean, Netflix is really the one that started it. They're still king of the hill, obviously outside of YouTube. And then the success of YouTube caused a lot of these studios to look what they were doing and think, well, we can do that too. And so instead of having licensing deals exclusively with Netflix, where, you know, Netflix was making money, but so were the studios, they decided they wanted a bigger piece of the pie. So they started their own streaming services. But now you flooded the market with too many services. So people were cutting the cord because cable was too expensive and they didn't really want to deal with it. You could go get Netflix, watch most of the stuff you want on there. It was easier. It was cheaper. You didn't have commercials. But now you look at this, you want to watch certain shows, you got to have all these different streamers that ends up being more expensive than what cable was initially to begin with. And so a lot of these streamers, you look at Peacock and Paramount, some of these, like, they're not doing great. So it makes sense that these streamers and probably some of these studios would start kind of merging together because they just can't pull enough of an audience on their own to support a streaming service. I mean, you've even seen Disney do it, getting Hulu involved, and ever since they got Hulu involved, Disney Plus has looked better from a money standpoint. But Disney Plus on its own, I don't think has been, I would say, a successful streamer in terms of they're still, I believe, somewhere above $10 billion in the hole of what it costs to start Disney Plus. Could it be profitable eventually? Sure, it could. But I think at this point, you look at where everything is, these studios merging together is almost inevitable. Because also by going to streaming, they've cut off a lot of their other revenue streams they had. Used to with a movie, you had the movie run, and then you had the DVD Blu-ray run, and then it would wind up on a streamer or rental or whatever that was. Well, essentially with the streaming services, you've cut off really physical media. So you no longer have Blu-ray sales, DVD sales after a movie run. You basically just have whatever it makes in the theatrical run, and then it goes onto a streaming service. And some of them, like Comcast and Universal, many times will make a deal, like with Super Mario Brothers, a very successful movie that came out, but they made a deal where it shows up on Netflix for a period of time, so they still get the licensing deals, and then it still ends up on their own streaming service. I think that's a pretty decent compromise, but for the most part, these studios have cut off a major portion of the income they would get from these movies. And you just look at the diminishing returns here. If you look even Superman, it made, I think it's going to end up making $600 million at the box office. It's not going to be more than Man of Steel was, but it's not really about the amount of money at the box office necessarily when you're looking at those two movies. When you look at the amount of tickets sold for those two movies, Man of Steel almost had, I think, more than double the amount of tickets sold versus Superman. So your audience is diminishing. The amount of people going to movies is diminishing. As streaming services now, there's so many choices you can choose from. It's harder to get people to go to theaters. It's more expensive. And so really when you're looking at this stuff, it makes sense they would start going together. Now, I do agree from an optimally speaking, you would like more competition because I think competition is good. And this is what helps things, be fresh and inventive. But I think when you're looking at the logistics and the realization of where this current industry is with competition of independent studios popping up, AI out there, all the technology, I think you're basically fighting a losing battle thinking that you're going to operate how you did like in the 90s. And I just don't think it's going to go that way. I think if you look at kind of what happened with music, once streaming got involved, physical media got taken out of it, it's a completely different landscape than it was even 20, 30 years ago. I think movies are in that same realm now. And, I get what he's saying, but I think you're looking at the reality of where just basically Hollywood is right now.
And announce it. But then they've still got Paramount Plus. And so, I don't know, man. I would not like to see them merge with Warner Brothers at all.
I understand. And I agree. I mean, because, my basic philosophy here is that I want more competition. I want more competitors in the field, not less.
Agreed. Completely agree with that.
Less. But if I'm Paramount, and if I have the money, and remember, Elson he's got daddy money. Daddy's got all the money. Daddy runs, he's got access to tap into however much money he wants. Remember his sister had Annapurna Pictures?
That lagging, by the way, is the video. It's not me. Just so you know, I went back and checked.
Yeah.
I mean, Daddy's got all the money in the world. So, and look, I'm just saying from Paramount's point of view, having Warner Brothers added to the slate when they've got DC up and rolling now, they've got originals firing on all cylinders. If they could grab that and then instantly like that have the number 2 streaming service in the world, just like that. Again, whether I want to see it kind of isn't the question, because I'm with you. I would rather not. I'd rather, and if they want to sell Warner Brothers, sell it to somebody else. I mean, somebody that's not already one of the major studios. But I'm just saying, from Paramount's point of view and from Paramount's perspective, depending on the dollar amount, I could see why this would be very attractive, like really attractive. But to your point, Rob,
I completely agree with that. I think from a bit, like, you're talking about like an ideal situation where you want more competition, as you know, in terms of all these studios making great products and movies and things. They haven't been doing that, is the other problem. They've been, for the most part, just making very subpar, just kind of slop. A lot of them relying on the superhero franchise that really ruled the last decade. And now you're looking at these studios as superhero movies are starting to, in my opinion, I think they're starting to get into the end of the era of where superhero movies are just making $1 billion all the time. I think this summer kind of showed that with Superman, Fantastic Four, and all the other MCU movies this summer. And you're kind of maybe seeing a return, ideally, to kind of what, you know, studios used to do, which is having cheaper movies that were just sort of simple family type of movies. You've seen the movies that have made $1 billion outside Deadpool and Wolverine have been family type movies for the most part. So I think ideally, yes, you would like to see more competition, but if none of them are really servicing the market like what people want and have wanted over time, you're just left with a smaller and smaller consumer base that the amount of studios out there, there may be too many of them. And again, I think Hollywood, not that it won't ever exist, but I think in terms of what we've always thought about Hollywood, will over time kind of go away because you're just going to have increased competition. Everything's becoming more decentralized as technology increases, and the barrier to entry is not as big as it used to be because of technology. A smaller studio, you've seen Angel Studios pop up. You've seen a lot of these independent movies do very well. And if, you know, you're talking about ideally you don't want to see Warner Brothers sell off to Paramount, very likely, though, there will be another studio that becomes a very big studio in the next 10 to 20 years that is not one of the big boys. It's more of an independent studio that ends up servicing the market and becoming a bigger player. So I still think you can have competition out there, even with these two, even if they merge together. I still don't think it changes what is already happening necessarily. But I understand what he's saying from an ideal standpoint. But from a business standpoint, I agree. I completely understand why Paramount would want to do this, as you would then almost instantaneously be the number 2 streamer. Not that, you know, they may not go the route if they buy Warner Brothers. They may not merge them together like Disney is with Hulu and Disney Plus. But if they did, either way, they would have 2 properties. Essentially, they'd be the number 2 streamer, which is, and it's a big asset for a studio to have that.
Hey, how about you make one movie first?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's. I remember when the LA Clippers signed like James Harden and like signed a bunch of guys, and they were talking, we want to create a dynasty of title runs. And everybody in the sports world was like, hey, maybe, I don't know, maybe you get on the court and play one game before you start talking about how many titles you're going to win. And it's great. Listen, I love a lot of the stuff, Rob, that Paramount's been saying. Top Gun focus, Star Trek focus, theatrical focus, longer theatrical windows. I love hearing, but it's all just things to say, speak. Let's see what they're able to do.
Yeah. And also
that's going to be the key thing.
It's still all about your content, and making movies is incredibly difficult. Finding great material is even more difficult. People sometimes when they talk about these mergers, they act like it's just, it's really easy to find great material and we can all go make it. Anyone who works in the business knows that it's incredibly difficult to find really great material that you want to invest $100 million in. And then,
except for when it comes to comic books, I would say that is the biggest layup out there. If you're making comic book movies, you literally have source material from successful comic runs. You already know how an audience reacts to it. And this is why it's so puzzling when you look at what Warner Brothers has done with DC and what, Marvel now has been doing with the MCU, in that you have all this source material you can choose from. I would throw Star Wars in there as well. Tons of books from the expanded universe of Star Wars that you could just pick from and make movies out of, and they would probably, if they were executed correctly, would be a massive hit. So outside, I would say superheroes are a little bit of a caveat there. I understand what he's saying here, but there are some of these where it's almost they refuse to just take source material and just basically make a movie out of it without changing it up a lot, because you get these, producers and creators that want to put their own spin on things, or we have to change the story or whatever they feel like they need to do. I don't think they need to do most of the time. Now, some things you can't adapt directly from a comic to a movie or a show, because some things work in comics that won't work on live action. But outside of that, I do agree it's not necessarily always just the easiest thing for what you're going to make movies on. But I do think this is where independent studios come into play, and a lot of creativity can be in those that eventually catch on, that become, hits that maybe what people look at as classics now in the future could be looked at coming from more independent sources.
And once you've done that, you could have the greatest people in the world involved. But with every project, there's a little bit of alchemy. There's a little bit of spinning straw into gold. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's a very difficult thing to create a heady concoction of elements that come out to be a Top Gun Maverick. Because if it was so easy, they'd run, every movie that would come out would make $1.5 billion. And they don't. So running 2 studios means you have to find twice the material. And that is not an easy thing to do.
Somebody in the live chat is saying, I think what Paramount wants to do is buy the TV division that Warner Brothers is spinning off. Nobody wants the TV division. The TV is dying. Cable is the stuff everybody's trying to get out of. They might take it as a part of the package if they need to, but I don't think they're looking just to acquire that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. More reports are coming out that Paramount may be looking to buy Warner Brothers. I could see why they would want it, but is it a good idea? That's another question entirely.
So all in all, this is just a rumor right now, but it has been rumored for a while that Warner Brothers is, looking to sell, essentially how they've been structuring things and spin-off companies and everything like that, and the amount of debt that they're in. So it wouldn't be surprised me at all if Paramount buys them. It still wouldn't surprise me if you see Comcast Universal be involved in talking to them. But like, he said, and I said earlier, I do think you would have more, red tape involved if Comcast gets involved because they're so big. So purchasing them could run into some government regulation issues. Paramount wouldn't have as much of that. But undoubtedly, if Paramount does this, they're making a really big splash ever since Skydance took over. And you could see them making a move to really become a major studio again, really having major hits. And if they're talking about having, focusing on movies and having longer theatrical runs, I think these would be great things if the movies are good. I think the movie theaters would love this, as those are struggling. And I really do worry about movie theaters into the future when you're looking at the current landscape right now. I think when you're just talking about this, there's the idealistic way of looking at this, and you want more competition, you want more studios out there competing. Ideally, sure, I would like that as well. I love competition. I've talked about that many, many times. But it's one thing in the theme park realm where I think you're talking about a growing market. Having more competition in a growing market looks different than having a lot of different competitors in a shrinking market, because then everybody's just vying for a smaller and smaller pool of money or potential customers out there, and somebody's going to get left out. They're just going to be left out. They're not going to have the movies, the shows, whatever it is. So they're just slowly going to start losing money. And so this is when you start seeing mergers and streamers, going in together, because I don't think currently I just think there's too many streamers for the demand out there right now for how much money it costs to run a streaming service. It's hard to run those things profitably. Really, the only one that does it right now, long-term wise, I would say is Netflix. I know Disney has been profitable the last few quarters, but historically, they've had some issues there. Netflix is the really golden goose of it all, of how much money they've made and being profitable as a streamer. And so it doesn't surprise me at all if this were to happen. And it would be very interesting because it would have some ramifications. So if Paramount were to buy Warner Brothers, potentially you're talking about the licensing rights at Universal Studios with Wizarding Worlds. Would that change or anything? It really would depend on those agreements. I imagine a lot more of that has maybe to do with J.K. Rowling. I'm sure she has a lot of final say in terms of her own IP of what would happen with it. But it would have some ramifications, undoubtedly, probably in the theme park realm as well as in the entertainment realm. And I think if you're Paramount, it makes a ton of sense why you'd want to do this. So they're making a big splash ever since Skydance took over, getting the UFC rights. obviously potentially buying Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers is one of the oldest studios out there, so they have a lot of IPs that they can utilize that they could use for more content. And I guess it would just depend on what would they do with it. Would it be two separate studios, or would they kind of merge it into one studio? They would probably keep it separate if I were to guess. But it's very interesting, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of this down the road because, again, unless something drastically changes here, you're just seeing less and less people go to movie theaters now. And a lot of it is because of streamers. A lot of people look at these movies that, the big movies, probably like Avengers Doomsday, that will probably make $1 billion. You're going to have 1,000 different cameos in there. Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, all these people that, they want to see these characters or these actors play these characters that they've known and loved. But long term, I think there's a lot more questions than answers when you're talking about Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And movies that people aren't so sure about, it's so expensive to go now. A lot of people just say, well, I'll wait until it comes out on streaming. And look at Superman. It's already out on digital. That movie came out in July and is literally on digital about a month after its release. So even if it's a good movie, a lot of people say, well, I can wait a month and I'll just watch it at home and not pay. You take your family to go to the movie theater. At the very least, you're probably looking $50, $60. You're talking about tickets alone before you talk about popcorn and candy and everything else. So I think streaming has actually damaged Hollywood overall. I don't think it's quite worked out how all these studios thought it was going to. And now they're in this situation where the audience got out of the habit of going to movies, partially because of COVID and partially because of the pricing and partially because the movies haven't been good. So I think this really is a situation of their own doing, of just not having good content, losing trust of the audience. And I think this is, you're dealing with sort of the fallout from this, or maybe the beginning fallouts of this, of these big studios now potentially merging together because they may see where they could see the writing on the wall here and just say, we see where this is going. And again, unless you drastically change something to increase the demand here, it's just a shrinking market. And if you're looking at that scenario, I mean, you can hold on, but if you're in a shrinking market, you're just going to hold on to a sinking ship. So if you already think it's going a certain direction, you might as well sell now, get whatever money you can for it. And if you're somebody that's looking to acquire something, you think you could position yourself to be, one of the top players in a shrinking market. There's still money to be made if you're at the top of this stuff, but not necessarily at the bottom. And I think that could be a lot of this is going on here. And we'll have to keep an eye on that. But I think you're going to see a lot more of these mergers potentially, especially with these streamers. I'm very curious about like Peacock. That one really is at the bottom of the barrel. And you talk about they just lost the WWE rights, which is not great for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Peacock with Universal Comcast, if they try and do some sort of major move there to really boost that or whatever they could do there. So it's an interesting landscape. It's changed a lot in the past 10 years alone. And again, I think with the rise of AI and technology and these independent studios out here, kind of like what we've seen in the gaming world. I mean, you still have AAA games out there that make a lot of money, but some of them come out and they bomb. If they're not good, people are not going to buy the games. And then you've seen these independent game studios come out and make these games that people love, and they just make tons of money. And sometimes they're, small studios, 2, 5 people, 10 people in a studio doing this, and obviously they can grow from that. And I think you can see the same thing on the movie and entertainment side of things with as much of a leveling of the field, I guess you could say technology has done and will continue to do going forward into the future. But it's either way, it's very exciting and very interesting, and we'll keep an eye on this. And when there's anything that concrete comes out about this, we will talk about it here on this channel. But for now, that is going to be it, though, for this video. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of theme parks, entertainment, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, do you think that Paramount might buy Warner Brothers, and do you think that is a good move? And until next time, we will see you later.